On April 12, 1967, at Tougaloo College on the outskirts of Jackson, Mississippi, Stokely Carmichael, who popularized the term Black Power, lashed out against the war in Vietnam. This speech followed just days after an appearance at Nashville, which prompted riots by students at Fisk and Tennessee A&I universities. 3 days after Tougaloo, Carmichael participated in mass rallies of anti-war supporters in New York and San Francisco. Born in Trinidad on July 29, 1941, Carmichael became an American citizen when his parents came to the U.S. and were naturalized. He was still in college in 1960 when the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC, was formed. It was SNCC which organized the sit-ins in the South. In 1966, as its leader, Carmichael spent the year transforming the organization toward the concerns of black college students. This speech, given to about 700 students, illustrates the clear division between traditional nonviolent civil rights leaders like Martin Luther King and the more militant leaders coming on the scene. Here the viewer can see Carmichael define America's racial problems. Note particularly his concern with semantics and his use of antithesis to contrast the black and white perspective. Also noteworthy, of course, is his ability to excite and motivate his audience. At one point, he leads the audience in a chant which, though abbreviated on this tape, lasted 10 minutes. In all, the viewer can witness an example of confrontational rhetoric from the 60s, illustrated by the fiery Stokely Carmichael.
I'm trying to figure out which one belongs to the CIA. Nick, it was once one of the only places we could run to for safety when we started to work in Mississippi in 1961 and 62. So that it's sort of like coming home when we come back to Tougaloo. Now I want you to, before I begin, to take a look at all of the pressmen before you. You will notice that not one of them are black. And they are going to have the nerve tomorrow to call me a racist. Are you hear me? Understand how the honkies are. They don't recognize their own racism. I understand that I'm following the great white father, Bobby Kennedy. I understand last night he told you a couple of things. Now I want to put some of them in perspective for you. When he said the world belongs to you, that comes from a great black man by the name of Frederick Douglass. He said the world belongs to the youth. That Bobby urged us to stand up and speak out against injustice. Well, we could tell him that we don't need anybody to tell us to stand up anymore. Not only are we going to stand up, we're going to right the wrongs of our people in this generation. Our generation has the memories of the unpunished murders of Schwerney, Goodney, and of Medgar Evers. There are going to be no more unpunished murders. They've been telling you that the kids in Nashville started a riot. Number one, you ought to recognize it is not a riot, it is a rebellion. A rebellion. And number two, you ought to be proud of your black brothers and sisters at Fisk, because a honky cop touched one of them and they told him you got to touch all of us. We just have to recognize as we move in this year that we have to let them know that the days of a honky cop running into our neighborhood, beating us up and running out are over. Now, we want to talk about several things tonight. We want to theoretically speak about the theories and the basic assumptions from which the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee proceeds, which would be theories of self-condemnation, denial of one's freedom, the importance of definitions in the world today, and violence. And then we want to move in and speak about those pragmatically in terms of shame that black people feel for themselves, the education system that is completely racist in this society and that is geared against us. We want to talk about developing a concept of peoplehood for black people in this country and around the world, which is desperately needed. We want to develop them and instill in our people the right to fight back against anybody who messes with us. Now then, we want to talk about the theories of self-condemnation. The existentialist philosophers, Camus and Sartre, notably raised the question about self-condemnation. They want to know whether or not it is possible for a man to condemn himself. They never answer the question. The revolutionary philosopher Frantz Fanon answers the question. He says it's impossible. You ought to know Fanon, he's a beautiful black brother. Now, let us give it, we don't think that self-condemnation is possible in thinking. We just don't think it's possible, and there are several examples for us in our generation. For example, the Nazis, after World War II, when they had the Nuremberg trials, the Nazis they arrested. If they condemned themselves, they had to inflict punishment upon themselves. An example is that any of the Nazis whom they arrested, who lived, who allowed themselves to live, said that they killed Jews who were inferior. They weren't human beings, so they didn't kill human beings. Or they said that they didn't know what was happening in Germany at the time the Jews were being killed. Or more sophisticatedly, and as more people in America today say, they were just following law and order. Now, the Nazis, who admitted that they killed human beings, had to commit suicide. They had to commit suicide. The only ones that were able to live were the ones who rationalized away their own guilt. Now, that's very important. An immediate example for us here in Mississippi would be Neshoba County, Philadelphia, Mississippi, where a hunkie by the name of Rainey and 8 other hunkies decided to kill decided that they had the right to kill 3 human beings. Now, the entire county of Neshoba is incapable of indicting Rainey and his hunkies for what they did, because they elected Rainey to do precisely what he did, to kill anybody who tried to change the status quo. So that it is crystal clear that self-condemnation is in fact impossible. White America cannot do it. If she did, she would have to commit suicide. That may not be such a bad idea. So since she cannot condemn herself, it is for us, black people upon whom she has perpetrated those crimes, to condemn her and to go on for ourselves. We must stop seeking to imitate white society. We must create for ourselves to save our very humanity. All right? Now, the second very important point, we want to make a differentiation between giving one one's freedom and denying one one's freedom. In this country, you were to think that white people were gods, that they had the right to give us our freedom. And so what we had to do was to beg them or to act the way they want us to act before they gave us our freedom. You ought to make it crystal clear in your mind that all men are born free, but that they are enslaved by other people. That is to say, white America is denying us our freedom. So she can't give it to us. Her job is to stop denying us of our freedom. In other words, she ought to become more civilized. You ought to understand that, basically. Defined us as Negroes. Nowhere else in the world is there such a word. When we went to Puerto Rico, we delivered our speech in Spanish, and we tried to find a word that equals Negro in Spanish. There is no such word. The nearest word is negro, which means black. There is no such word in German. There is no such word in Swahili. There is no such word in France. The only word is Negro, and they have named this Negro and put with it the adjectives that they have. Lazy, stupid, apathetic, nut watermelon, have good rhythm. And when we say that we are black, the honkies got a nerve to tell us, you're not black. But now there's something much more insidious about definitions. And that is what white America has been able to do, is to try to make us react to their definitions of our very terms. Let me give another example. We remember in 1954, when Dr. King and other great black leaders would say, we want to integrate. In the minds of black people across this country, we meant good houses, good schools, good jobs, better neighborhoods, and a good way of life. That was crystal clear in our minds. But as soon as they were on TV or in public area, if they said the word integration, some dumb hunky was going to jump up and say, you want to marry my daughter, don't you? Having the strength to tell the hunky later, they began to react to his definition. They would say, oh, no, we don't want to marry your daughter. We don't want to be your brother-in-law. We just want to be your brother. We don't want to sleep in your bedroom. We just want to be your brother. So that what white America was able to do was to have us react to her definition of our terms, and we never got anywhere because we were playing her game. Now in SNCC, when they ask us that question about whether or not we want to marry their daughters, we tell them, your daughter, your sister, your mama. White woman is not the queen of the world. She's not the Virgin Mary. We tell them so they won't forget. She's not the Virgin Mary. She can be made like any other woman. Let's move on. Let's move on. Ourselves as a group. We must see ourselves as a community wherever we are. And we must let them know that infringement on one is infringement on all. Because if we let the honkies know that every time they touch one of us, they got to face all of us and won't touch any of us. But in order to develop the concept of peoplehood, you must know who you are and where you came from. Do you know that when we ask college students on black college campuses, where are you from? Jackson. Where your mother from? Jackson. Where your grandmother from? Jackson. Where your great-grandmother from? She is from Africa! Did you hear what I said? She is from Africa! And if you don't know how she got here, I'll tell you. White folks stole her and brought her here from Africa. about Africa. Yeah. They start off their civilization with Greece. Did they ever tell you that the first university in the world was the University of Timbuktu in Africa? Now then, finally, we want to talk about this thing called violence that everybody is so afraid about. Here you are talking about you afraid of violence, and the honky drafting you out of school to go fight in Vietnam. You're going to sit in front of your television set and listen to LBJ tell you that violence never accomplishes anything, my fellow Americans. Sit there agreeing with him that violence never accomplishes anything while he's bombing the hell out of North Vietnam. But you see, the real problem with violence is that we have never been violent. We have been too nonviolent. The problem isn't that we are violent. The problem is that every time they come into our neighborhood, beat our heads, and go back out, we sit there and talk about it in a whisper. And today we're telling them, play in their minds, if you touch us with your hands, we're going to break your arm. So when they come to teach you about nonviolence, tell them you don't need it. Tell them we have been nonviolent. We don't bomb churches, we don't shoot people, we don't lynch people, we don't beat them and throw them in jail. Tell the honkies who are violent to be nonviolent. Be upset when they yell, burn, baby, burn, because they taught us how to burn. They burnt all our churches down to the ground. And nobody in this society ever thought to stop them when they burnt our church down. But when we retaliate, everybody is upset. Don't you worry about it, because we're not going to take it anymore. In Lowndes County, Alabama, last month, they burnt 2 churches to the ground. They were black churches. A week later, a white church was burnt to the ground. Or we will all worship outside. So now let us forget about the issue of violence. This is the most violent society there is. You can't turn on your television set without 5 minutes getting entertainment of shoot 'em up, kill 'em up, and jujitsu chop 'em up. Now then, we want to talk pragmatically about black people, and particularly about you black students here at Tougaloo. Now, what this country has done, see, white America, is that she's told a number of lies about us, which she believes. Now, that's bad. But what is pathetic is that a number of us believe those lies ourselves. And now what we have to do, what we have to do today is to begin to unbrainwash ourselves about those lies about ourselves. Let us give some examples. White Western society told us that she was civilized, and she was coming to civilize us. So she came to Africa, and our first act of contact with civilization, the honkies made us slaves. And now here we were believing that that was civilization. Here we were just running around, swinging on the vines, beating out syndrome, not messing with anybody. And here comes this honky who's going to civilize us and makes us slaves. Obviously, they don't know now, and they never did know what civilization is all about. But be that as it may, white America has always said in her history that she came to do so many good things to help everybody else. They're getting ready to help Latin America right now in Puerto de Rico. I'm going to do it. They came to Africa to make us civilized. They came to Africa to tell us about Jesus Christ. We were in Africa, they were in Europe. They had the Bibles, we had the land. They came to be missionaries. When they left, they had the land, we still have the Bible. Jesus Christ says it is more honorable to suffer than to inflict suffering. Yeah. When you are called to serve, you have a choice. Either you say no and face the possibility of going to jail, or you become a hired killer. You inflict suffering on somebody. It is more honorable to suffer. You should join the greatest, Muhammad Ali, and tell them, hell no, I ain't so. But now for the black youth, it is a particular reason why we shouldn't go to the war in Vietnam. Our problem has been, as black people, we've always been concerned about white America, never about us. And what we've always thought is that white America equal the same interest as us. That is not true. We must now be concerned with us. Let me give you some examples. We always want to prove what good Americans we are. The very first man to die for the War of Independence in this country was a black man named Crispus Attucks. Because here he was dying for white folks' freedom, and millions of his brothers were enslaved in the very country. Oh, but we wanted to prove what great Americans we were. We begged the white folks to let us fight in the War of Independence, and they said no. So we organized ourselves in bands of armies, training ourselves with our bare foot to prove to the white folks what great Americans we were. Please let us fight, white folks. And finally they came and inspected our troops and said, good niggers, you can fight. And they had us fighting the Indians. Like fools, we should have teamed up with the Indians and taken their for the freedom of this country. And when it was over, they gave us some medals, a piece of paper, and tapped us on the head and called us good niggers. But we weren't satisfied. We were going to prove to this country what great Americans we were. You will notice that your teachers don't know anything about you. How can they teach you? Today is to destroy the black colleges and the black ideology. Tougaloo College used to have a black ideology, and then you became a brown baby. And you've got all these young, nice, white, liberal people who never heard of Frederick Douglass teaching you. You ought to go to Brown and teach them and never heard of Abraham Lincoln. Did you read? You see, if you were reading Malcolm X Speaks and the autobiography of Malcolm X, when you hear his name, you would jump to your feet. But you don't read it. What you read is what white folks tell you about Malcolm X. He hated people, and you don't want to read them, and you live in a world full of white people who hate you. And you read about people who are full of hate telling you that a black man hated white folk, and you don't want to read them. And you're reading a white man full of hate against you. You ought to read the primary source for yourself. That's what you're in school for. About yourself. The world is moving around us. Every student group around the world is moving for their liberation, except us. We're sitting like bumps on a log waiting for white people to come and help us. You ought to recognize what's going on in that Vietnamese war. Here they taking you, training you to be a soldier, making you shine your shoes till 3 o'clock in the morning, going 8,000 miles to shoot a man, and he ain't never called you nigger. Yeah. Now, we're not only opposed to the war in Vietnam, we're opposed to compulsory against the draft. Now, we're against the draft for anybody, black or white. Now, we recognize that when they say hell no, they will say that we should go to jail. Don't be afraid. It is much better to be confined in jail knowing that you have not killed anybody than to be walking outside a murderer. We must save our humanity. We must. If this country wants to bomb the rest of the world, let them. We will tell them the war in Vietnam is for the birds. Lindbergh, Ladybird, Luke. That this